Merry Christmas! Season's greetings, good cheer, and warm tidings to one and to all. Elias B. Worthington here, welcoming you back to a very special holiday episode of The Adventures of the Sons of Town Hall, our deep dive into the vast archives of the finest duo to ever don hats. You could call these, and indeed I just may, chats about the meaning of life through the eyes and endeavours of two men who have seen much more than most of this blue and beautiful world of ours. George and Josiah's history together is a gift that keeps on giving, and I suppose in that way it is a bit like the spirit of Christmas itself. Indeed, the more we open ourselves to the magic of this season, the more love there seems to be to spread and share.
Madmen cross the water to get from A to B. Madmen cross the water, just you wait and see.
Speaking of, if you haven't already sensed it, I am in a particularly good mood this evening as I sit, pipe in hand, mulled wine in glass, roaring fire by my side, looking again through a selection of your letters. I felt like Santa himself, with the bags and bags that I received since last we spoke. My kitchen smells of fresh bread and rosemary, thanks to a loaf I've recently pulled from the oven, and of apples and cinnamon, which sit simmering for a pie I intend to bake once we are done here. Burl Ives has been singing, it seems, just to me through the Victrola the better part of the afternoon. My slippers are on, my feet are up, and though I have no one to bump into beneath the mistletoe this year, I have you, dear listeners, and I have our trusty friends, Josiah and George, and that is more than enough to count me among the lucky ones this Christmas. That would be enough, but I actually have more to be thankful for today. Much, much more. Wait until I tell you about the letter I now hold. I got jitters when I saw the return address, but figured it was some sort of joke. Then I spotted the royal waxed seal, and now I'm beside myself with butterflies. It's not every day or every duo that receives an envelope sent from Buckingham Palace, now is it? I feel some sort of drum roll is in order. Maybe a fanfare of cornets? Oh, Mother, if you could see me now. Composure is called for, and respect. So I shall gather my nerves and see what's inside.
Send in your letters, send in your love, for the attention of Elias B.
Dear Elias, I am writing to wish you, and of course, George and Josiah, the happiest of Christmases, and to extend an open invitation to them, and of course, to you, to join me for tea on the 23rd of December. If they'd be so kind as to sing for me as well, I'll be all ears, but they certainly shouldn't feel obliged. I am primarily interested in hearing a few of their stories. There aren't, after all, many good men left who have seen as much of the world as I have. And if I may be candid, it does get a bit starched collar over here, and I would welcome the breath of fresh air, or maybe the breeze from the open ocean is a more appropriate metaphor. With Yuletide joy and best wishes, Elizabeth R., the Queen.
Send in your letters, send in your love, for the attention of Elias B.
Well, I don't know what to say. Shall I just drop my ribbon microphone and declare victory now? The Queen? Oh, clearly the Royal Mail has been quite delayed in delivering what must have been written well over 2 years ago now. Oh my, what a royal shame! And yet, what a glorious invitation to receive. I mean, sure, it would have been nice to have received this before our sweet and sturdy matriarch passed, and I wonder now if the invitation stands for tea with Charles. I don't know if the boys would be interested in that, but still, have you ever? The Queen? Oh, what does a man say after that? The Queen! Or maybe we can cut to a word from our sponsor so I might splash some water on my flushed face and take a measure of brandy. The Queen.
The Royal Society of London for Improving Natural Knowledge is looking for a few brave men to go where no man has gone before. Join us on the first mission to the bottom of the world. Serious inquiries only. Ability to withstand extreme cold, essential. Ability to work as a team, essential. Bravery, essential. Nautical experience a plus, but not essential. The Royal Society of London for Improving Natural Knowledge.
Okay then, I am back. That was kind of a cold shower of an advert, I suppose. I will say there is not a chance I would consider a trip to Antarctica, though. By Neptune's knees, not a chance. I can imagine nothing less appealing as my chestnuts darken, blister and pop than to be forced to brave such harsh and unfeeling elements for who knows how long. I would far rather sit right here and read and reread the letter in my hand. The Queen! Certainly the boys, though, can and have withstood such cold. This room feels even more cosy now than before, just thinking about that horrid notion. And let's not forget about that invitation to tea with the Queen. The Queen!
With every beat of my heart and every breath in between, nothing can tear us apart forever, 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 forever. My Queen.
Alas, we still have business to attend to. Let it be a lesson to the soft youth of today that even after receiving such a letter, we get back to the grindstone and put in a hard day's work. Elias B. Worthington does not rest on his or the Sons of Town Hall's laurels. No, indeed. Today's installment goes back to the Christmas of 12. A particularly momentous and memorable one for the lads, when, as is often the case, if one takes note of the Star of Bethlehem shining upon them, they found themselves in the right place at the right time. So, do slip into something comfortable, perhaps a flannel onesie, and I don't mean cricket whites now, like I'm currently wearing, or perhaps throw on that cable knit sweater adorned with those reindeer your grandma gave you years ago. Top off your eggnog and settle in for George and Josiah's Christmas on the Canal. So the boys had been cold the better part of November and December of 12, whilst working as navvies on the Caledonian Canal up near Inverness. If you don't know it, this is, of course, the waterway that cuts through the very heart of Scotland, from coast to coast, from loch to loch, and also, if you can hear the slight differentiation in pronunciation, from loch to loch. The boys were repairing several stretches where the banks had collapsed and doing a lot of puddling.
When I heard the word puddling, I just thought gumboots on age 6 or 7, splish-splashing around with our friends in Macintoshes, giggling our heads off.
Sounded great. Something like we could easily handle. I actually heard puttering, which was something I also thought I'd be good at. You know, just knocking about, doing really nothing at all. Kicking back.
Which we call pottering.
Either way, it seemed like a job that we were very fit for.
Puddling was actually something quite different. George and Josiah had to shovel deep into the heavy clay of the highland soil to form a concrete-like substance that they would then pound into the banks and canal bed to prevent further leakage or decay. The work was back-breaking and relentless. The sound of the spades and shovels was harsh, and the vibrations sent shockwaves up through their cold hands and aching arms. And though the sun's arc was low in the winter months, and the light fleeting, the days seemed endless.
It was really hard work. The pounding of the clay and the soil was just an instant headache for us. Such tough, grueling work.
You have to imagine standing one leg under the other on the side of the bank, pounding the clay to try to make something that would be watertight. I was not made for it. I kept falling to the water at the bottom. George would have to pull me up. Sometimes he wouldn't notice that I had gone down, and I'd be down there for a while.
You'd have to overcome the most painful blisters on your hands. Your hands were cold, wet, and they would be rubbing against the wooden handles of the instruments we were using to compound that soil.
And the sound, I guess it was a little bit like the sausage factory floor.
The whole ordeal brought back the not-so-great meaty memories of that Dusseldorf sausage factory.
Most of the other navvies drank away their weekly wage at first opportunity Friday night, and by Sunday afternoon they bemoaned the need to take up the shovel and pickaxe again that Monday. Still, there was a camaraderie among the men, a kind of sardonic humour about the unfair lot they'd collectively drawn. They worked side by side like a chain gang all day, and they bunked together in the most Spartan of boarding houses, sometimes for just a shilling a fortnight. Josiah and George worked beside them. They drank together, and naturally they sang together. Work songs. Pirate songs, though sung in a thick brogue. Callum was the biggest and burliest of the group, a ruddy-faced man in his 30s with tattooed forearms and a limp from a childhood case of polio. He consistently lashed out at the lads for laziness.
Get your hands in the mud and work! Get on your knees and keep digging! This isn't going to build itself, is it? This canal is the pride of the nation! You are not!
Callum was huge, probably 2 meters tall, easily over 20 stone, missing half an ear, thighs thicker than oak trees.
Reminded me a lot of my father. Not a man to be messed with.
The only thing that saved us was that he heard us sing, and we were singing a work song once out there in the canal, and Callum loved it. The man with only a year and a half. Turned out he really loved music.
The lads somehow never liked it as Callum did, but they put up with it and sang along. Perhaps that's a fitting example of how they never fully integrated with the other navvies. Our lovable lads wore different hats, as it were, and under those hats their heads were full of brighter and bigger dreams, colours far more vivid than the greys and browns of the wet and muddied woolen clothes that clung to their bodies, climates far sunnier and warm than the dark and chilly and seemingly endless Scottish winter.
Most of the other navvies would drink after the shift ended and talk about some other job that might be hiring. Digging tunnels.
Working mines.
Laying track.
Hauling timber.
Long line fishing.
Chimney sweep.
Undertakers.
Sewer hunters.
Leech collectors.
Rag and bone men. That sort of thing. It was jobs that we knew, but we didn't want.
We knew we were destined for something greater.
We had a different vision.
And so it should come as little surprise that by mid-December the boys were socialising less and less with their fellow workers and had managed instead to ingratiate themselves with a different strata of canal culture. These were among the first in what would become a vibrant tradition of artists and outcasts who gave up the stability of terra firma and the typical routines of coal-fired flat living, what with neighbours banging in on you from all sides and bills piling up, for the wonders of a libertine lifestyle lived afloat a narrow houseboat.
When we first were invited aboard one of these canal boats, we met a whole different class of people. So different from the navvies, we suddenly were drinking tea, we were having old fashions, we were having conversations about literature and philosophy, we were modeling nude for some of the painters, we were talking about all sorts of things. Our whole worlds opened up.
After our long work day was done, we passed many chilly evenings under the bright winter stars along the banks around makeshift tables, or just passing tobacco pipes around small fires of oak and ash on one deck or another, swapping stories with a most curious assortment of runaway aristocrats and a variety of black sheep.
These were our people.
The lads told of their many crossings of the great oceans, something ironically very few of the boat dwellers had ever experienced. And the canalies, as some like to be called, entertained them with tales of the odd assortment of riffraff that ultimately all found their way to the water. Despite some obvious differences, raft life on the ever-moving, wide-open sea and the houseboat life on the virtually stagnant, narrow canals shared much in common. And so the kinship grew strong. Round about the middle of December, preparations for Christmas began on the waterways. Josiah and George hadn't celebrated the season properly for many, many years, being so often alone at sea. In fact, they at first wondered what was happening when garlands appeared along the rails and the holly came out. Spiced wines and ciders replaced their usual cocktails. Fruitcakes and cookies were baked in the boat's galley kitchens. Meals became heartier too. Sauces thickened. Duck was served. Roast lamb, even.
It had been so long since either of us had experienced a traditional Christmas. We barely knew what was going on.
The food tasted so delicious. I was so happy to finally be eating all of these scrumptious morsels, but I didn't know why and what was being prepared. It wasn't really until the caroling began that it brought me back.
That brought us back immediately, profoundly, powerfully, thoroughly.
Suddenly I was back in the kitchen in Kentucky.
And how fortunate and warm and joyous and welcome we felt. Finally.
Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast is white and our ale is brown. Our bowl is made of the white maple tree. With wassailing bowl we'll drink to thee.
Well, maybe the effect on you just now was similarly strong. I know it quite moved me. But upon hearing that verse and the gorgeous melody, quite a refreshing change from the work songs Callum made them sing by day, George and Josiah were transported to a simpler and sweeter time, when in two very different households, on two very different masses of land, both had felt something uncannily similar. The seeming eternal love and safety of a mother's embrace. The warmth of a fire burning in the hearth, the promise of a full meal on the table. For both unfortunate fellows, Christmas was the one time of year each could count on a measure of security. The only time of year each knew his father would not only be home, but would be sober, and even, at least for the most part, happy. Somehow, despite so many lean, hard years, both boys had believed with unquestioned faith in the magic of Christmas.
There wouldn't just be turkey on Christmas Day, but boiled gammon, and then on Boxing Day morning, we'd sit down to steak sandwiches.
It was the only day that I didn't have to get up early to do chores, and yet we still got up early because of the smells. There was biscuits and bacon, and even in the hard times, there was always one small gift wrapped under the tree.
These were the most joyful of memories, and both felt with nary a speck of doubt, at least for a few days each year at the end of December, that man was fundamentally good, that there was a God watching from on high, and that God was smiling on all children whose hearts, like theirs, were filled with love. So it took them a moment on the Caledonian Canal so many years later, with those memories so long and deeply buried, to realise what they were feeling as the warmth rose up through leg and loin and spread across chest and cheek. In fact, it wasn't until after they were singing along that they realised what it was, or why it was, that they were even singing.
Here's to our horse and to his right ear. God send our master a happy new year. A happy new year as ere he did see. With my wassailing bowl I drink to thee.
You know, it's really hard to explain what came over us.
I'm not sure I'd ever heard you sing like that before. Such feeling, such emotion, such volume. Very Scottish.
And I was going to say the same thing about you. That vibrato, that falsetto. I didn't know a man could sing that high before. It was beautiful.
Something about that season, the snow coming down, the smoke in the air, the spirit, brought me right back.
I'll never forget it.
That year was unlike any other, it has been said. Every boat was decked out in ivy and evergreen. Luminaries were lit nightly. The glowing candles lined the banks and the boats, and every chimney billowed smoke. That smell alone was enough to fill the heart. Many of the city folk came down to the banks each evening to be part of the celebrations. Normally, there was a great divide between the world on the canals and the world on land. Each looked disparagingly upon the other. Not this year, though. Not during the Christmas of 12. Even a few of the navvies were sometimes seen gathering with the group as Christmas approached. And that certainly was a first. Even Callum came down a few times, eventually bringing his homely wife Elspeth and their young son Callum Jr. along. Though sheepish at first, standing on the outskirts of the circle with his big hands tucked into their pockets, Callum and his fellow navvies eventually were welcomed in as well, and all sung carols together. He had a hell of a voice, and I don't mean that colloquially. I mean it literally. Awful sound, and loud. Very loud. It was hard for the boys to get Callum singing out of their heads.
Sleep in heavenly peace.
Wine was passed. Stew was ladled. Collections were taken up. Clothing and coin were handed out to the neediest. It has been said, in fact you likely have heard it, or maybe even said it yourselves, that during the Christmas of 12, at least up on the Caledonian Canal, not a soul went without. And most who remember that year will tell you that the sons of Town Hall were to thank. So, I suppose it should come as no surprise that with all the merriment and drink, that the children would run off without any of the adults taking notice. Indeed, the parents of young Callum Jr. should be forgiven as well for losing track of their child as the sun was setting and everyone was singing that Christmas Eve. It is, at least in distant hindsight, more than understandable that with the crescendo of good cheer rising steadily and nightly toward that very evening, and with the excitement among all the local children expanding to near explosive levels, one might for a few moments lose sight of a loved one or two. It is also understandable that with the canal seemingly frozen solid, that the children would have dared each other to walk farther and farther out onto the ice, and even try to walk all the way across to the opposite bank. And while the children tempted fate, the revellers sang on unawares. Callum, in particular, was really taking liberty with the high parts. Given the strength of those voices, no one noticed the screaming at first. In fact, most assumed the shouts were just a few drunken sopranos really going for it. But curiosity turned to horror when it became clear that it was not singing, but the screams of the children running to let the grown-ups know something terrible had happened.
It took a while to understand what had happened. The children were all yelling at once.
They were out of breath. They were scared. Everyone was singing. No one could understand what was happening.
Then I realized it was real. Something really, really bad had happened.
Little Johnny was saying it over and over again. I can still hear it now. Callum Jr. has fallen through the ice.
They knew what they had to do, and they wasted no time. They ran. Like the wing-booted Hermes himself, they ran. Faster than they'd ever run before, at least since Pamplona. George and Josiah sprinted toward the frozen Caledonia Canal.
Over the cobbles.
And through the snow.
And right past his grandmother's house.
And then along the frozen banks toward where the kids were pointing. They jumped over drifts. Their minds were racing even faster as they approached the spot. In the open ocean, they knew he would stand no chance. On the polluted Thames, the sweet child would certainly already be a goner. Indeed, in any moving water, fresh or salt, the situation would be hopeless. However, on the barely moving Caledonian, it was quite possible young Callum Jr. may have remained close to where he had sank.
We ran toward the edge of the canal, ripping off our hats and scarves.
We cast off our coats and jumped onto the ice.
We held on to each other to prevent losing our footing.
They didn't hesitate, but dove headfirst into that dark hole that Callum Jr. had made when his small 6-year-old body broke through into the frigid water and sunk like a stone. The brave boys were well into the dark, icy depths when Callum Jr.'s mother, Elspeth, beside herself with panic, and the rest of the group arrived. It took a bit longer for Callum Sr. to get there, given his bad leg. Several in the group held torches which cast ominous shadows across the black ribbon of ice. All that could be seen when Callum Sr. looked out, the 4 soles of George and Josiah's boots sticking up and out of the water. He didn't know what to do. Callum was not a man to sit idly by when someone else was working, all the more when those men were working to save his only son. But he didn't know what he could do. He didn't know how to swim. What a helpless feeling when your beloved boy was out there drowning. So, though he wasn't a church-going man, he got down on his one good knee. Elspeth knelt beside her big husband. And then everyone took a knee beside them and began to pray. It was Christmas Eve, after all, and if there was any night of the year where prayers were answered, it might just be this one. When the rest of the group saw big Callum Sr. and Elspeth kneeling, they did the same. The whole crowd bowed their heads, took to their knees, and with full hearts united, they begged to their Maker for a miracle. Fortunately, the parents didn't see first Josiah and George resurface in turn, empty-handed and gasping for air. Second dive, too, most tragically, revealed nothing.
We couldn't see anything through the inky water.
It was thick and dark and so cold.
We poured around the bottom, but he was nowhere to be found.
It was terrible. We were losing hope.
If you've ever looked for something precious lost, a ring, a key, or a locket of lover's hair, you may know a measure of the disappointment and desperation felt in groping for something that just isn't there. I know I do. The boys had to fight the encroaching feeling of helplessness as their air ran out and little Callum Jr. was nowhere to be found. But still they dove down again. The sons of Town Hall are nothing if not resilient. They refused to relinquish hope. As if little Callum Jr. was their own boy, they doubled their resolve. Down again they went, despite the numbness spreading from extremities to core. Callum and Elspeth continued praying, too, with increasing vigour, their faith undiminished, their fervour still strong, and their friends prayed beside them. Callum Sr. made some promises to God in those late-stage prayers that would certainly be hard for him to keep should his son be saved. But the longer they waited, the less and less likely that seemed. I'm not sure how to explain it, dear listeners, but in a last-ditched, desperate effort, Josiah and George plunged one last time beneath the ice and let the current carry them downstream a piece. And this time, by the grace of the good Maker, their symphony of prayer was answered. For as it is written in the book of Matthew, whenever 2 or 3 come together in honor of my name, I am right there with them. So it was that just before midnight, on Christmas Eve, the tips of the boy's fingers touched Callum Jr.'s waterlogged breast.
I wrapped my arms around the boy,
I wrapped my arms around Josiah.
and we pushed our heavy boots off the hard-packed bottom of the canal.
We fought back against the current towards the torchlight coming through the hole in the ice, racing against time. We broke back up into the air.
George and I were coughing and gasping.
At the sight of 3 heads, there was a shriek of joy and shouts from the bank. However, the shrieks turned to panic again, as it became clear that only 2 of the 3 mouths were gasping for air. Poor Callum Jr. was blue, and he was not breathing. Soaked and shaking with cold though they were, George and Josiah managed to carry his delicate body out of the canal. They laid him onto their coats, which they had cast off earlier onto the snow. Adrenaline was doing its job now, and they set to trying to resuscitate the boy. It was in this moment that the sons of Town Hall showed their true mettle, displaying a level of teamwork only possible between men who have lived and worked in harmony for so many years, in so many precarious positions, through so many unkind elements. They moved as one in perfect synchronicity. They called for a fire to be built. They asked for blankets. They stripped him of his wet clothing. Josiah filled his lungs with air. George pressed down with the perfect measure of force on his young chest. Josiah breathed again into his fragile lungs. George pressed again on his chest. It went on like that for what felt to Callum Sr. and Elspeth like another lifetime. The tense crowd gathered close around. Elspeth was sobbing uncontrollably. And then, under the stars as bright as those over Bethlehem, young Callum Jr. coughed and gasped and spit up a belly full of water.
When Callum Jr. finally came to, we collapsed backward onto the cold snow.
We were freezing, and we both just passed out.
The next thing we knew, we were being carried away from the water and close to that warm fire.
I looked over and saw Callum Sr. and Elspeth hugging their baby boy to their chests. They were weeping, rocking him backwards and forwards beside the fire.
And then Callum Sr. came over to us.
We were shivering painfully.
He reached out with both arms and embraced us both, big hot tears rolling down his face.
Then it seemed the whole crowd came in close, slapping us on the backs and wrapping us in blankets.
As if on cue, the bells of the village church rang out. It was Christmas, and the group began to sing.
It's Christmas in Caledonia, ya-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, ya-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, ya-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's Christmas in Caledonia, ya-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's Christmas in Caledonia, ya-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's Christmas in Caledonia.
Perhaps it is best we leave them there. Wrapped in blankets, hot toddies in hand, the life force returning slowly to their limbs, and, more miraculously, life returning to young Callum Jr., and the Wassail song rising along with the sweet-smelling smoke upwards, higher and higher toward the sparkling stars and heaven itself. It was Christmas on the Caledonian Canal, after all, and many years would have to pass before the miracle of that night and the spirit that the sons of Town Hall helped to spread would be forgotten.
Thought that I'd lost lost you. My heart was a river you broke through. Still all of the village sang a Christmas song, and the bells tried to ring a hopeful tune. We never knew the stars could shine again with the year that we'd been through. Still the children dance, the coals they glow. It's Christmas in Caledonia. Yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 da. It's Christmas in Caledonia. Holes in my mittens and my hand-me-downs, snow up to the lamps across the town. All of my wishes whittled down to dust. There wasn't any work left to be found. We never knew the stars could shine again with the years that we'd been through. Still the pudding's sweet, the brandy flows. It's Christmas in Caledonia. Yada da 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 da. A few shillings shy of where I used to be. With tears in my eyes, it's hard to see. I prayed and I prayed that you would make it through. On Christmas, you'd be back with me. We never knew the stars would shine again with the year that we'd been through. Still the children dance, the coals they glow. It's Christmas in Caledonia. Yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 da. It's Christmas in Caledonia. Yada da 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 da. It's Christmas in Caledonia. Yada da 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 da. It's Christmas in Caledonia.
So may we all count our blessings this season and celebrate all that we have, rather than lament that which we might be lacking. I am and have been and always will be Elias B. Worthington. And in case you were unaware, I count you among my many blessings, and I hope you count me among yours. All links to the Sons of Town Hall website and social media can be found in the episode description.
To support Madmen Cross the Water, share these episodes with someone you love, and go to patreon.com/Sons of Town Hall.